Hey y'all, welcome to the channel. Today we're checking out 10 mistakes tourists always make in London.
Welcome to the city of London. Yes, of course, it's raining. Over 20 million tourists descend upon this historic city each and every year, and you very well might be one of them, hopefully on a day a little bit better than this. Now, my name is Evan Ettinger. I've lived here for over 10 years, and today I'm gonna be helping you not make the same mistakes that every tourist makes upon visiting the city, so hopefully you can get the most of what the city has to offer.
Excellent.
So first big mistake, staying in Zone 1 for accommodation. London is a massive city, and a lot of tourists wrongfully assume that they need to stay somewhere near the center of the city so they can see everything. But there's a couple big issues with that. It is a really large city, so no matter where you stay, you're going to end up having to travel at least a little bit to get to some places you want to go to. The public transit here is amazing. This ain't America. Provided you're within a 10-minute walk of your nearest underground station. Actually, now that I think about it, that's probably my biggest tip. Wherever you stay in London, make sure you're within a 10-minute walk of an underground station.
Okay.
And then the whole of the city opens up to you. You can get anywhere you want really
That
quickly.
makes sense.
Even in 10 Downing Street. Oi, Rishi, you snack.
I'm curious as to why it's called Zone 1. Oh, so the whole city's split up into zones. You don't have to stay in Zone 1 to have a good time.
Let me in. Every tourist is already pretty familiar with Covent Garden, St. Paul's, Kensington, and the like, but you're already probably going to be visiting those places anyway, so why not develop a more intimate connection with an area outside of the standard touristy zones? But who else can say that they've stayed in Fulham? People in Fulham don't even want to tell you that. Just replace Fulham with Balham or Clapham or any of those other parts. Plus, I haven't even mentioned how expensive it is to stay in Zone 1. It's a no-brainer. You save money, get a better connection with an area outside of the touristy spots. Don't stay in Zone 1.
Okay.
Good. Yes.
And now on for mistake number 2, which really goes hand in hand with mistake number 1. We already talked about how you shouldn't really be staying in Zone 1 for accommodation, but you also shouldn't be spending the majority of your time here, especially in all of the touristy locations, such as Leicester Square, where I am right now. Now, there's no doubt if you've heard of London, you've heard of Leicester Square, or even Oxford Street, the busiest shopping street in all of Europe. However, what used to be a great place full of individual little shops and places to pick up things has now become essentially an amalgamation of different overpriced American candy stores and other tourist traps that you really shouldn't be spending any time.
It's like Times Square. What's that park called?
Such as Leicester Square, where I am right now. Now, there's no
Leicester
doubt if you've
Square.
heard of London, you've heard of Leicester Square, or
I've
even
not.
Oxford Street, the busiest shopping
Nope.
street in all of Europe. Especially in the evening, this place is absolutely packed, but it plays an incredibly important role in London society, which is to make sure all the tourists go here so that we have a little bit more space in the rest of the city doing things we actually want to do. So instead of walking down American Candy Street, why not try out nearby Carnaby Street, which still has a lively vibe with actual shops and good food? Or instead of Leicester Square, why not try out Seven Dials, one of the most beautiful parts of inner London. It's right next to Covent Garden and has one of my absolute favorite pizzas in all of the city. That, of course, being Home Slice. You gotta try it. As a guy from New Jersey, I can attest those big pizzas are well worth the 20 quid. But you'd also be making a mistake not to venture out of the center of the city at all. London has so many beautiful parks, and each one has its own vibe that you can just go pick one for the day and explore, and you'll have a blast.
What do you even do in Leicester Square?
You go to premieres, pretty much. That's it.
What about the M&M store?
I've been in there once and I didn't buy anything.
Yeah, Leicester Square sounds a lot like Times Square in New York. It's where all the tourists go. I actually used to live in New York City, and during my morning commute, I would have to walk through Times Square. It was a struggle. There were usually people stopped in the middle of the sidewalk looking up at the buildings, and it was very frustrating. So I imagine Leicester Square is very similar to that.
Assuming you're flying into London Heathrow, one of the big mistakes I made when I first moved here was booking a minicab to take me from the airport to my accommodation in Tottenham, and that rang me up 75 quid, nearly $100 back in the day, when if in reality I'd just taken the Piccadilly line per se, it would have cost me a little bit around a fiver. Yikes! And at the time I didn't even have any suitcases because Air Canada lost them, so really, big L's coming out of Evan. However, obviously, price aside, the big reason to get a black cab, Bolt, or an Uber or whatever would be for the comfort. Yes, you get to have a cab all to yourself. It is a bit pricey, but it's comfortable. Now, if you're thinking you want to get one because it might be faster to get from point A to point B with one of those, actually, from my experience, most of the time, I think I'm gonna book a cab because I don't want to be late and then it gets stuck in London's horrendous car traffic. It would have been way less stress-inducing and way cheaper just to get the underground. And that's enough about that. That's dreadful. Taking the TFLs. Also, while you're here, if you want to blend in, instead of pronouncing it with a T, say tube. Like, subscribe to my YouTube channel.
Tube.
I still don't like it.
YouTube. Take the tube. That does sound British. I'm all about some public transportation, y'all. I have a car, but I only drive it maybe once every other month. I'm either walking or taking that subway.
Now, originally the mistake I was going to talk about here was that a lot of tourists don't realize that in between certain tube stops is only like a 5-minute walk, so you might as well just get out and see something new. However, while filming this video, I've seen so many tourists make some just crucial mistakes that I feel like just doing a PSA and adding 2 additional ones here. So first off, if you're a tourist and you're in a central area in the evening, you can't mistake it. You'll see a rickshaw / tuk-tuk or hundreds of them passing by, blaring excruciatingly loud music, and do not get one of these. No Londoner will be caught dead in one. They're pretty much a tourist trap. And if you're unaware, it has been in a legal battle for the last decade, and nobody seems to care, but essentially, they're completely unregulated by TfL. So if you, a tourist, go, oh, you know, it'd be nice listening to Despacito while my eardrums burst, and we go down Oxford Street in a little rickshaw. That sounds fun. Oh, you know what else is fun? 100 pounds. Oh, that sounds pretty cheap for only a mile. How about 180, 500 pounds? Is that good for you? I'm not making these numbers up. There's been more than enough stories of tourists being scammed because the rickshaw drivers can charge whatever they want. So just don't get in a rickshaw. Now you might see these red phone booths behind me and your heart will swell. Thinking of Dave from accounting and his amazing trip to London. He has some photos inside of some of these. Don't be like Dave. Dave probably still smells of piss. The scent doesn't quite wash off. You can take a photo next to one of these, sure, get your gram, pose next to it, look all aesthetic, whatever you want to do. But the second you open that door, it's like opening a hot oven, except instead of heat, it's a smell of hot piss.
Really?
So maybe just don't do that. And if I find out that you came to London and you went inside of one of these things, it's really gonna piss me off. So, I don't know, don't do that.
Okay. Yeah, I would probably go in one of those. And now I won't. Thanks for the tip. I'm still gonna go in one.
Crime. Mistake number 5. They commit crime.
That's pretty nice.
Well, before we move on to some food-related mistakes that I see tourists making time and time again, you may want to make a day trip out of the city during part of your visit.
Yeah.
And they say a man is bored of London is bored of life, and I do agree, but the rest of the parts of the UK are also pretty stunning. So if you want to take a trip out to Henley or Brighton or any other
Yes, I
cute little
do.
towns like Cambridge outside of London, they're well worth a quick visit. But what's the best way of booking your tickets there? You may have heard that British people love queuing. Well, they sure do. But there's no reason to queue unnecessarily for a paper ticket to travel out of the city. With the TrainPal app, you can download your e-tickets,
Okay.
your rail cards, and more, all within their app safe on your phone.
Good
And
to
what's
know.
more is that TrainPal always try and find a way to save you more money when you're booking. So they split the fares up, whether that be 2 different singles, or they offer you vouchers, such as if you use the code EVAN when downloading the app. You get a couple free vouchers on me. You're welcome. Buying a rail card usually costs about £30, but if you do
Is
it
this
through
a
the TrainPal
commercial?
app, you can pay
He snuck a commercial in there on us, y'all.
We've all heard the stereotypes. British food is extra bland. You know who made those stereotypes? All the people that decided to go to the most touristy looking pub in the world next to Westminster Abbey and went, oh, this food doesn't taste too good.
Ah.
Really? If you're going to go to a place who advertises and says, real British pies and fish and chips served here, you deserve to have a microwave meal, okay? I'm giving you the tip here, though. Don't go to those types of places. If you're
Okay.
going to go to a pub to have some really good pub food, just do a little bit of research beforehand. Don't just walk into any place that says, dumb tourists accepted here. Maybe look up the places on Google Reviews. Make sure it's not a Spoons.
course. I mean,
Wetherspoons
of
is a
course.
chain of pub that serve really delicious microwave meals. So I would make sure that it's not a Spoons. You can go there, it's really cheap, but it's kind of like saying, I went to Taco Bell for the most authentic Mexican food ever by saying I went to Spoons for good pub food. Just not necessarily the place you want to go. Now, if you are in Central and you're like, but I do want to go to a nice pub, well, there's Waxy O'Connor's near Piccadilly Circus. It's kind of like if an Irishman went, I want to build a pub, but I also want to build a treehouse, and then says, why is my accent so shite? That would be the place you'd go. It's lovely, it's huge, it's beautiful. There's live Irish bands every Friday. Really love Waxy O'Connor's for a central big pub. And if you want to have a drink on the Thames, maybe Riverside, another central place. It's called The Anchor, and it's near London Bridge. And lastly, a place I used to frequent when I worked in Covent Garden, so it's very central. You've got the Lamb and Flag, one of the oldest pubs in all of London and one of Charles Dickens' favorites. Also,
Oh,
it's quite
wow.
cool because the tunnel to get there is so short that I, as a 6'4" man, really have to crouch to get in, but it makes it more fun, especially when you're inebriated. But the main reason to not frequent too many central pubs?
This costs £7.50 each.
Northerners are having a heart attack right now.
I watched a video about pub culture in Britain, and they mentioned Wetherspoons, and apparently it sucks. So yeah, I'm going to avoid Wetherspoons. I'm going to that Lamb and Flag place because that looks amazing, and Charles Dickens used to go there.
Next big mistake tourists make in London is eating only English food. Sure, Pub food can be great, depending on where you're going, but London is one of the most diverse cities in the world, and it has the cuisine to prove it. Fun fact, did you know that there are more Indian restaurants in London than in Mumbai in India? That's the real deal. Indian food in London is an experience. Now, if you're someone that, for instance, isn't that big a fan of spicy food, don't worry. A lot of the Indian food here was made with the palate of the Brits. So basically the national dish at this point, the chicken tikka masala, is one I highly recommend, is a nice smooth curry that's not too hot in the slightest. You can also go for butter chicken or chicken korma, but do try and get any old Indian takeaway, and there's a good chance it'll be better than where you're from, especially if you're from the US. It's kind of like saying Mexican food in the UK is bad, because it very much is, but in the US it's better. We have the argument here for Indian food. Now, like I said, pretty much any Indian restaurant you go to, you're going to get a good time. However, if you want the true London experience, you've got to go down to Dishoom. Dishoom is by far one of the most delicious Indian foods you can get in the city. There's usually a huge queue to get in. Dien, you should wait for it. If your curiosity will get the better of you.
Try the gunpowder potatoes. Okay, I'm
Now,
I love Indian food. I love chicken tikka masala, so I'm definitely going there. Hard to believe there's more Indian restaurants in London than in Mumbai. That's crazy.
But this next mistake is probably the easiest way of spotting a tourist from an actual Londoner. Using a paper ticket on the underground. Stop. Just stop it, okay? It's not 1999 anymore. You don't have to fear modern technology. Y2K, it never happened, okay? You can use any contactless card from most any major bank. Just tap it on, you're good to go. It's smooth sailing. You even got your Apple Pay and all of your other weird pays. Google Pay, Samsung Pay, all the stuff.
Nice,
that's fine.
yes.
Just tap on in, move on through. No one likes having to wait behind some idiot that's using one of these stupid tickets as they try and fumble it through and the whole thing is causing congestion, and boy, just stop. Also, you're like, oh, but it saves me money. It doesn't. Actually, these things cost you more money because if you're using your contactless card, if you're using your Apple Pay, there's actually a cap placed on the total amount you can spend depending on what zones you're going through. So it just makes sense. Use a contactless card, use an Oyster card, use an Apple Pay. It all works. Now, to throw my girlfriend under the big red bus, when she first started visiting me in London from Marlow, she would get a zones 1 to 6 travel card. If you're a Londoner, you're already laughing because I don't live in zone 6, but she thought because she's commuting from outside of zone 6, that would save her money. No, it's like no. We can all laugh at her pain, okay? The actual thing would be she's commuting into zone 1, and since I live within zones 2 and 3, she can get a zone 1 to 3 travel card if we really plan on going wild and traveling on the TFL that week, but usually not. So there you go. Don't get the zone 1 to 6 unless you're living or constantly visiting someone out there. For some reason.
That might be a little confusing, the different zones and having to get different tickets. I could see I would do what his girlfriend did. I'm not very smart, y'all.
I used to work in this building up on the 3rd floor.
Cool building.
Right down the road from St. Paul's Cathedral. When you descend into one of the underground stations and your train finally pulls up to the platform, you might get the overwhelming urge to listen to the sign on every single carriage that says, "Push button to open door." Don't do it. You're just gonna look stupid. Because if you can believe it, the doors open automatically. The driver has a button that opens all the doors simultaneously, so you'll just be looking a bit stupid trying to push the button when the driver hasn't opened the doors yet.
That's good to know.
Why is that a thing? I don't know. That's an underground fact for you. But it is just on the underground, so if you are on the DLR, National Rail, or the Overground, by all means, push the button or you'll be left on the platform. But while I'm here, in Hyde Park, I guess, why not tell you a couple other quick London Underground mistakes? I'm assuming you know this already, but just in case you don't, please stand on the right side of the escalator. Do not stand on the left side of the escalator. If you're on the Underground, just move to the right. Just stand to the right. That allows normal people that want to walk up the stairs or walk down the stairs to do such. They do so on the left. So keep to the right or you'll be getting tutted at quite loudly.
I think that goes for everywhere. Every airport should have this rule. We need to let people know this needs to be a worldwide rule. New world order.
And I guess the final one, this is an unspoken rule, pun intended, but you're not really supposed to interact with strangers on the Underground. Just everyone's keeping themselves, got their AirPods in, reading a book, or I don't know, playing music on their speakers for some darn reason. But the rule is you're not really supposed to speak to strangers, but honestly, I don't know. It's nice to have a chatty tourist every once in a while, but too often, I don't know.
Sure.
I've become too much of a Londoner. I moved here as an American and I was like, how's it going? Nice day in London, innit? And now I'm like, listen, I'm trying to increase my Spanish streak right now. Could you, not? I guess if I had to cut one of the rules out of this video, that is one tube E forgotten. These are getting worse.
Yeah, they are.
My train of thought has left the station.
Oh, that wasn't that
So
bad.
here I am at Big Ben. This is the famous one and only clock tower in London. Pretty much an icon, recently been refurbished, looking pretty stunning. Except
good.
it's not actually Big Ben. Big Ben is the name of the bell within the clock tower known as Elizabeth Tower. But if you say to someone, oh, I went to Big Ben, they know what you're talking about. Language evolves, we all know it's actually the name of the bell, and nobody really cares about that at the end of the day. But you do need to make sure you say certain landmarks in London by their correct names, because you could wind up at the wrong place. Such as, here I am next to London Bridge, the famous bridge you know of in London. Except this isn't London Bridge, this is Tower Bridge. This bridge is the one you actually want to go to because the actual London Bridge, you're going to be incredibly underwhelmed. Yeah, this here is London Bridge. Don't get the
weird.
names mixed up. You don't want to wind up here. It is only like a 10-minute walk, but still. Now, the Millennium Bridge is a very touristy bridge in London, but it still works. It's got lovely shots over St. Paul's, and Londoners are still pretty upset after it had to be rebuilt after the Death Eaters destroyed it, but just don't bring that up. We're still hurt about it. And now, with all your newfound knowledge, you're going to blend in like a true Londoner. Unless you try and use cash on the buses or something like that. Oh God, I might have to make a part 2 for this. Well, if you're interested in that, please be sure to subscribe. And also, I made a video on the pros and cons of living in London, if that's something you fancy, so go click that if you're interested.
Oh, interesting video. Some of those things I had no idea about. I feel like he covered some tiny little minutia that you don't usually hear about. Tiny little things that could really cause a lot of frustration when you're actually there. I think when I go to England, I'll probably be in London, but I kind of want to explore the rest of it. I'm more interested in the natural landmarks on the countryside, like the Dover Cliffs, Brighton Beach, that kind of stuff. Hastings sounds really cool, looks beautiful. But these are good to know. Hopefully I won't make these 10 mistakes now that I know. But I probably will because I'm not very smart. Anyway, great video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Later.